Hello friends! Recently some people have tried to push me toward negativity. However, today we'll have another constructive video with suggestions for real solutions in Ukraine, discussing relevant issues and problems. But these aren't really problems. Our politicians throughout almost the entire history of independent Ukraine have singled out a number of issues that, as a kind of political technology, were turned into so-called problems that are supposedly being solved to this day. In reality, they aren't being solved because a non-problem can't be solved. But thanks to this, people can be set against each other and divided. This leads to the weakening of the state, to internal conflicts, to some extent even to war, and ultimately to general discord and the absence of any prospects in Ukraine. We will touch on many such problems, but at the core of this are just two: the language issue and the structure of the state. Today I want to highlight Belgium for you as a country that can serve as an example. There are actually many countries with such examples. We've discussed Switzerland before, but Belgium is also a very clear fit here. Fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of Ukrainians are living there now. By the way, be sure to write your opinion in the comments. I'm addressing Ukrainians who are in Belgium. Share your thoughts about the video and everything I'm telling you now. I want to know your point of view. So Belgium, its form of administrative territorial structure is a federation. The official languages are Dutch, French, and German. The population is about 11.5 million. As you can see, we're now going to move on to the economic indicators. Belgium has a federal system, and this system has only been in place in Belgium since 1980, if I'm not mistaken. This is an example that such things can be done even in the modern era. This is basically what I'm proposing for Ukraine, and there's a separate video about it. I'll insert a link here regarding the proposal for a federal system based on the example of the United States of America. I want to emphasize this is not as an act of separatism or the division of Ukraine, but on the contrary, as an example for preserving integrity and independence. Let's move on to the economic indicators. Belgium's gross domestic product, don't be shocked, is $632 billion, even more as of last year. The gross domestic product per capita, again, don't be shocked, is $53,500 as of last year. Let's compare that to Ukraine right away. Last year, Ukraine's gross domestic product was almost $179 billion, which is basically nothing. Ukraine's gross domestic product per capita is $5,181. So we can state that the average Belgian is almost 11 times richer than the average Ukrainian. 11 times. And let's note that in Belgium, the prices for apartments, food and cars are definitely not 11 times higher than in Ukraine, right? Let's put it this way. Maybe it's twice as expensive as in Kyiv. Ukrainians in Belgium share in the comments if that's accurate. That's per capita. Belgium's total gross domestic product is over 3 times higher, with a population 3.5 times smaller than pre-war Ukraine. Even now, Belgium's population is less than a third of Ukraine's. Let's remember that in Belgium, in Brussels, the headquarters of the European Union and I believe NATO are located. Well, for sure there's a NATO office there. So all the European bureaucracy, money and success are concentrated in Belgium, which has had a federal system since 1980, and has 3 official languages. Now let's move on to the topic of language. As I already mentioned, Belgium has 3 official languages: Dutch, French, and German. Do you remember? Not so long ago, our so-called President Zelensky spoke in the Belgian parliament. Let's ask ourselves a question. How do deputies in Belgium function if there are 3 official languages? By the way, besides these 3, there are also 3 unofficial languages that are either widely used or at least used in Belgium. So that's 6 in total, 6 languages for 11 million people. But let's get back to the parliament. How does it work there? Not all deputies speak the same language. That's absolutely right. Not all of them do. From a language perspective, the Belgian parliament consists of 62 French-speaking members and 88 members who speak Dutch. Now you might be wondering, how does this work technically? It's very simple, very simple. They have simultaneous translation in their ear. And it doesn't matter what language you speak, all members of parliament understand you simultaneously with this earpiece, and there's no problem at all. And people get into parliament thanks to their talents, abilities, and proposals. They are elected based on these principles, and they get down to business there. There's no arguing about what language someone speaks. No dividing people, just simultaneous translation in the ear, and that's it. But here, it becomes a problem that divides people and leads to terrible things. It's still unknown how this will end in Ukraine. But in Belgium, they just put an earpiece in their ear and focus on constructive work. That's why Belgians are 11 times richer than Ukrainians, and Belgium is nearly 4 times richer than Ukraine, despite having 3, previously 4 times fewer people. In 1991, with 52 million people, Ukraine had 5 times Belgium's population. Even now, I've shown you how these supposed problems actually function. The issues that politicians call problems are actually not problems at all if you want to solve them and work for the state. But if you're a cheap politician, you'll turn this into a problem, divide people, and use the primitive strategy of divide and conquer. Find an issue that can split a huge country like Ukraine, often with the help of money, the Federal Security Service, and instructions from there. Do you wonder how this works?
Mariška?
I need to step out.
No, say it in the official language.
Russian is the second official language.
Let's protect orthodoxy.
Is someone feeling unwell?
It will be bad for the wealthy and oligarchs.
We want a salary of at least 600 hryvnias.
Vote for the people's interests, not oligarchs. Natalia Vitrenko Block, People's Opposition.
You just saw it, like a memory vaccine, a memory pill. These are political campaign ads of Natalia Vitrenko, once a popular politician in Ukraine, who was widely recognized as working for the Russian Federation. But her son held a very high position at a state enterprise, also one of the largest, Naftogaz Ukraine. Miracles in Ukrainian style, don't you think? This topic has been discussed here for decades. And to this day, no one wants to simply take and remove it from the list of problems with a straightforward solution. Not to pay attention to it and make things convenient for everyone. Not to quarrel over this within the country. What actually made me change this video, which was originally planned to be completely different? I watched an interview with the ideologist and sponsor of the Svoboda party, that's Ihor Krivetsky. There was an interview with Gordon recently. I watched it very carefully from start to finish. For the first time in my life, I actually saw a real nationalist. I always used to say that in Ukraine there are only professional nationalists. What does professional mean? Somewhere there's a sponsor, a person without a real job, incapable of anything. Not all of them, I don't want to offend everyone, I mean those who are in the media. Oh, I'll call myself a nationalist, I'll be aggressive, under someone's protection, I'll beat someone up, intimidate, rob, and things like that. No, Krivetsky is successful. There's a lot of talk about him, but I'm not checking his biography. He's not perfect, but he's accomplished things and creates jobs. He also funds or funded Svoboda. I listened to the interview, some things I liked, some I didn't. He discussed the language issue again, sometimes romantically, saying swearing feels more natural in Russian, but Ukrainian is more beautiful. I agree. That the Ukrainian language, and I speak Ukrainian fluently, is a wonderful language. But we just have to admit that in Ukraine, a huge percentage of people, according to various sources, from 40 to 50%, and in the army too, by the way, speak Russian. Not because there's somehow lesser Ukrainians or Ukrainians who need to be re-educated. Right now it's trendy to re-educate people in the Soviet style. Historically, things developed this way, leaving some people feeling marginalized. For example, on television shows with 10 participants, only 1 or 2 might be Russian-speaking and they're dubbed into Ukrainian. Is this due to quotas or because of Putin's attack on Ukraine? Let's not discuss monuments now. I react strongly to discrimination against either Ukrainian or Russian, as my libertarian ideology opposes it. There's no place for things like that. We waste time on arguments and negativity when we could be constructive. And just imagine, let me take a step back. If in the Belgian parliament they really don't even understand each other and need those earpieces, let's be honest, any resident of Lviv understands Russian perfectly, and any resident of Kharkiv or Odessa might not speak Ukrainian perfectly, maybe with a mix or barely at all, but they understand Ukrainian perfectly. So, this issue doesn't really exist, there's no need to create it. I want to focus your attention on this and concentrate on being constructive. Ukraine has plenty of real problems and real issues, and the national idea should be, for example, to make Ukraine's gross domestic product $1 trillion or euros. Let's surpass Belgium, let's focus on that. And when we have the goal of reaching 1 trillion euros in gross domestic product, then we'll have earpieces in the Rada. As I said, they're not needed, and all these issues will disappear, and both Russian-speaking and Ukrainian-speaking people will work together on this. To achieve this, we need to do many things that I've mentioned repeatedly. complete privatization, a total reduction of taxes, making them symbolic and in a completely different form, and a million other things that I constantly talk about. A whole reform program is ready. That's what we need to focus on. Any aggression within the country, any division on any issue, including religious ones, just like Vitrenko, who was pushing this 20 years ago, or 25. We should let go of these things. That's what I'm suggesting. I respect true nationalists like Krivetsky, but dislike the fake ones. There are also people dragging us back to the Soviet era. Everyone needs to reconcile. We need to take as a basis the things that were done in Belgium, to recognize that different people live in Ukraine, and they are all Ukrainians. And when it comes to external issues, for example, Putin's invasion of Ukraine, this full-scale war, both people from Kharkiv hate Putin, people from Lviv hate Putin, and people from Odessa hate Putin. And if it weren't like that, Putin would have long ago occupied Kharkiv and Odessa, for example. Do you see how it turned out? We already have annexed territories that weren't defended enough for various reasons. People in Kharkiv and Odessa defended themselves, and Kherson residents face tanks unarmed. They're Russian-speaking, but we shouldn't divide anyone. And federalization isn't separatism or a call to split the country. There's no separatism in the United States, right? There are states where foreign policy is decided by the federal government and internally each state competes with the others. Javier Milei is now carrying out a reform in Argentina, essentially decentralization. He is abolishing 90% of taxes and telling the states, introduce your own internal taxes, compete. Well, they don't have states, they have provinces, so compete among yourselves. Compete among yourselves. What's wrong if in Ukraine one region wants only the Ukrainian language and Kyiv wants 2 official languages? You don't even have to call them state languages, just official ones, specifically in a given region. The federal tax is small, low, and then each region sets its own taxes as it sees fit. In Lviv or Odessa, tourist cities, they would need to introduce a tourist tax. For example, here in Miami, there is a tourist tax. Some regions develop more slowly. There they might set a very low or even zero tax to attract business and legal entity registrations. And there are many such examples. I'm just skimming the surface now because you could talk about this for hours. Let's do this. Let's stop arguing and blowing things out of proportion that aren't worth a dime. Claiming culture solves everything or should come first is incorrect. You can't put the cart before the horse. Culture doesn't precede the economy. Let's follow Belgium's example. Instead of discussing €1 trillion, let's aim for Ukraine's gross domestic product to reach 600 billion, like Belgium. You won't need to worry about culture. It emerges naturally. When people are hungry, angry, and under pressure, dissatisfaction spreads among citizens and the state. He can't think about anything, not about culture or anything else. First, he needs to be fed and safe. And if he's fed safe and even has some extra money and prospects, then culture and the demand for culture will appear on their own. The state shouldn't be involved in culture, and people will gladly choose Ukrainian culture when it's presented beautifully and when it truly has value. And people shouldn't be forced with quotas, canceling textbooks, or tearing down monuments. I hate communists, Marxists. They need to be eradicated from Ukraine. They're all criminals, and I support that. But you shouldn't touch culture. You shouldn't pit people against each other. Everything else will fall into place naturally, as we say here, genuinely. I hope this video and real facts convinced you. We talked about Switzerland. Here's a specific example from Belgium. Your comments are very important to me. Do you support this point of view, or are you still aggressive and believe that all of the above are real problems and not issues invented by politicians? I'm grateful to everyone who watched this video until the end. I encourage you to subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and also subscribe to the Telegram channel. It's very important. Thank you. Goodbye.